Welcome to the Leading at the Next Level podcast with Dove Development Consulting, the show built to provide ongoing support for your leadership journey. Now, Cindy and I have had an amazing opportunity over the last several weeks to do some interviews with partners and panelists for the 2025 Leadership Legacy Experience, and we're going to continue that today. I get to chat with a fellow that we've developed a great friendship over the last 3-4 years or so, and I'm just so excited about it. Stephen Wanger is with Skyline Roofing. I met him before he was with Skyline, and we started that friendship, and I was just over the moon happy when he joined the Skyline team. We've known a bunch of the folks there for years, and it's so cool to see. Now, Stephen was working in the Harrisonburg, the Shenandoah Valley market. He's moved over. He'll talk about it in more detail, but I just want to make sure that I'm propping him up and saying, here's who he is and why I'm so excited about the time that we get with him. But today he's working predominantly in developing their markets in the Charlottesville and the Lynchburg area, just to make sure that people know here's the value that Skyline Roofing adds and the resources they provide. So Stephen, with that said, how about you share a little bit about your professional background, and really, now that you've been with Skyline a couple of years, your experience in the industry and how excited you are about what you guys do.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'm Stephen, and Wes, thanks for having me on. Excited to talk with you here. So a little bit of background for me. So grew up on a dairy farm, grew poultry. We did some poultry, we did dairy, grew up really that farm lifestyle where you're, doing all kinds of fun stuff, running around, whatnot. Right. So, from there, I would say probably when I was 17 years old or so, kind of developed an interest in trucking. I had some friends that were into it. And so I went into the trucking industry and drove truck for probably 4 or 5 years. And throughout that time, I really started getting into self-development, and really the one gentleman and platform that really in a lot of ways changed my life was the Patrick Bet-David Valuetainment group. They really got just changed my mindset a lot when I was that younger age, just kind of bouncing a little bit and figuring life out, right? And not that I'm not still, right? But from there, tried a couple of things on my own entrepreneurially, didn't work out the best. And then, but one of the things I developed was an appreciation for sales. And I believe sales is everything in life. Effective sales is communication, it's problem solving, and building relationships, So I started realizing, I was like, I want to get into sales. And so I started working that way, and ended up landing at a role where I was doing in-home sales for a while. And I believe that's over the time you and I met, and was at that role for a while. It was a good learning experience, but wasn't necessarily the culture and the sales style that I wanted and fit, my values. And so through that time, started looking for other avenues, and came across Skyline Roofing, and through a process of persistent follow-up, was able to land this role. And been here over 2 years now and love it. It's a lot of opportunity. It's taught me a lot. I've grown a lot, and fantastic company to be at.
Yep. Now, I want to go back to one or two things that you just said. You mentioned didn't work out so well in some of the entrepreneurial stuff. I want to challenge you on that. Did you learn from it, and has that experience helped you in everything else you've done moving forward?
Yes. I think one of the things that I've always kind of had in the back of my mind is, or the way I've approached life is, sometimes you have to try a couple of different things to figure out what works, what doesn't work, right? I think thinking you have to go work somewhere and only work one or two places your whole life, I think that's not necessarily. Sometimes people are fortunate. Sometimes they find something they love, a team that they love, and they find out at 18 years old and they're there for the rest of their life. But I think what it taught me a lot was finding a culture that fits, finding something that you can you can lean into, rather than being something where you're. I'm not sure how I would necessarily put it, but it definitely requires trying different things helps you understand maybe the best path for you, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And you and I have got a very similar education background. We've got the credentials and stuff that match one another, right? We don't need to talk about that a whole lot. But the reality is, part of your education, part of what's helped you succeed in the role you're in today, and it really prompts us up for the next question I'm going to talk with you about, is, hey, going through some stuff. That's our education. As we tried and we failed and we learned from it. Now let's go succeed doing something else and take those lessons, right? It maybe wasn't a college classroom, but sometimes life teaches pretty good lessons if we're willing to listen.
It does.
So,
it does.
Stephen, you today, in your role with Skyline, I don't think, and I may have misunderstood this, I don't think you have a team of folks that report to you, right?
No, I do not.
In the business development role. So in many cases, folks look at that and say, well, that's not a leadership role. And I call BS on that all day long, because by golly, there's a team of people counting on you to make sure that there's work on the table so it feeds their families, right? So you have a ton of leadership responsibility, right? Without authority. Now, that said, what's been your clear purpose? What's the thing? Because some days it would be easier to work in a factory and just make widgets than to go out
truck like I used to.
What's that clear purpose for you to accept that level of responsibility to make sure that you are going out there and helping put work on the books so food's on people's tables?
Yeah. For me, I think the thing that really led me to want a role with responsibility is multiple reasons. You don't grow unless you put yourself in a place that pushes what you're comfortable with, right? Of course, income is always if you're going to drive truck, or if you're going to work in that manufacturing line, you're capped at what level you're going to ever be able to make, right? So income does always play into, at least for me, the opportunity. More responsibility equals more opportunity to earn money, right? So that's part of it for me. Above that, though, probably for me would be the opportunity to develop myself and to get better at communication, to hopefully have an impact on people around me, and maybe this season is setting me up for a season to lead teams of people down the road, right? Or whatever that looks like. So, I would say that kind of answers that question, I would say.
Absolutely. And, before we hit the go live button and we started the recording and whatnot, you mentioned that your son's almost a year old, and I heard the joy and how fun it is to watch him grow and learn to do more stuff. And that's part of that driving purpose, right? That's why you get out of bed. How do you make sure that you provide for your family? But again, it's not just about the money. It's how can we make an impact in the process? And I'm hearing you say that too. Now,
and the hopefully the freedom that you can have to take care of your family, right? Obviously, the better you can lead, the better you can provide, and all the it's a circle, right?
Absolutely. Now, you've touched on it already. You talked about Patrick Bet-David, and my darling bride absolutely loves it. She's dug into a lot of his work and so on. I haven't as much, but I've loved hearing what she shared with me and so on. Fantastic. What was that motivating factor? Because for me, when I was in my early to mid 20s, same thing. It was just a different name, and that name was John C. Maxwell.
Yeah.
That I really latched onto. And I would say it absolutely changed my life. What was the driving factor that helped you start that leadership development journey for yourself?
Wanting more out of life. I didn't want to just float through life and end up being, 50, 60 years old and not, really having pushed and, set myself up, set my family up, hopefully, had an impact on the community or people around me, So I would say for me, that really being able to build a life that I want. And I absolutely still in the process of that, right? I'm not where I want to be at all. But yeah, I would say that's really what drove me to really lean into that. Was I was like, man, I want more. I want to create a better life.
And hey, here's a reality I've learned. I won't say the numbers exactly, but you and my son are pretty close to the same age.
Yeah.
and hey, but that means I'm older, right? The gray hair shows it and so on. But the reality is I would go so far as to say, I don't know many people that say, hey, I'm where I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
If they're looking for how can I make an impact on the people around me, whether that's their family, their team, or whatever, because it's always it's not about not being satisfied. It's not about not being happy. It's about, hey, I don't want to get comfortable. I know I can make a bigger impact. So I don't think that'll change, because I know your heart behind it. And where, this phase in your life, it's how do I make sure I'm taking care of my family? But I'm also hearing you say it from a point of you're unselfish, and how do you grow in the process and take care of the team around you? And that's pretty genuine.
Yeah.
Now, Stephen, I remember last year, probably a year and a half ago, you and I had the first conversation. You hadn't been at Skyline long. We sat down and talked about, hey, here's this event that Cindy and I've done where we bought a license for some content from John Maxwell and different leaders and so on. And we created a local event. We said, hey, maybe this is a cool opportunity to partner. And it was a good relationship, felt like it was a value add both ways and so on. And when we sat back down afterward, and I said, so here's what we're planning this coming June for the Leadership Legacy experience. Here's how it's different and so on. Why were you willing to partner initially? And because you had to make a pitch to the team at Skyline of here's the return on investment. And why were you willing to a second time to say, yeah, this makes sense. This is in line with what we want to do.
Yeah. So, originally, obviously, our relationship, one of the things on a little bit of a personal note, I remember when I was selling showers and I was looking for a new role, obviously you didn't end up having a direct connection on me getting a role here at Skyline, but I remember you being, just extremely open and encouraging and offering help however you could to help me find a spot, right? And so that, obviously we just started building a relationship at that point, right? So that was definitely on a personal side, that really helped me build a relationship with you and be like, man, Wes is a good guy, so that's just a little personal note on, for the company, and the pitch is really, there's a lot of businesses that go to this place or to this event. Sorry. And so a lot of those businesses have the same mindset. They want to better themselves. They want to, so getting around those kinds of folks, as well as, it's given our team an opportunity to send a few members of our team to the event to hopefully come away with some nuggets of truth of, hey, how can we apply this in our business, in our particular role? How can we, better what we're doing here at Skyline and the impact we're having on the community, right? So that's why we felt it was worth partnering.
I appreciate you saying that, because we've always been very, very intentional about the partnership and the initial friendship. Gosh, that's the meaningful part. And the reality is, we're not looking for partners that we can work with just for, hey, give us $1,000 or give us whatever dollars and we'll share your logo a couple of times. Screw that. I want to make sure it's somebody that I can genuinely say these folks are awesome. We have like values. We're looking to serve in the same way. We're in different industries, but here's how we're looking to serve. And that goes back to what you said earlier about in the sales role. And it's how do I fulfill a need for somebody and provide them a value added service that helps them do what they do better, right?
Yeah.
You're not looking to come to my house and say, well, I know you just replaced your roof 5 years ago, but I think you should do it again and we should do it for you, right? Maybe that was the shower business. I'm not sure about that. That's probably why you left, but that's a different
Yeah,
story.
well, they definitely had some interesting sales processes. We'll put it that way.
But and we've worked hard, Stephen, to whatever event that is we're doing to make sure we're putting like people in different industries. Historically, for the Live to Lead events we hosted, we'd have as many as 100 companies represented, right?
Right.
The one we're putting together for the Leadership Legacy, we're anticipating 250 to 300 companies from the entire Middle East, Mid-Atlantic region, from New Jersey to Atlanta, and some in the Southeast anyway, a lot across the country.
Right. Yeah.
How do we develop those relationships with people that have similar values? Now, let's talk specific about Skyline a little bit, because this is fun with me and you. We've got a pretty cool friendship we've developed. But what would you like the community to know about Skyline specifically that they probably don't know? They do roofing.
Right.
Talk about some stuff that the community probably doesn't know.
So there's a couple different ways to go with this. One of the things I would say that we're different from a lot of companies in, we really care about the community. And Kevin Weaver, he's our president, and he is a really strong leader. And when he says this, I really believe he means it. He said, we've got almost, I was talking to him on the phone a little bit the other day, going over a couple of these things, discussing a few of the points, right? And he was like, we have almost 100 people working for us, right around 100 people working for us. That's a big responsibility. That's probably, till you count wives, kids, everybody that's being supported, that's probably 400 or 500 people in the community that we're supporting, right? That's a big responsibility. So we care about our employees. Actually, one of our core values is family, right? So I guess the point that I'm making there with Skyline, community is important. That's employees' community. That's also, we give a lot back. We pick causes. We love giving back to our communities. So we're not just trying to grab roofs and run. We want to be a part of the community, and whatever community we serve in. We're for example, we're focusing a little more in the Lynchburg market. We're trying to get involved in some community stuff down there. So it's not just in our immediate Harrisonburg area. It's also where we serve, we try to give back there as well. So that's probably on that side of something a lot of people don't know about Skyline is that's an important value to us. On the other side, we specialize in commercial industrial roofing, and maybe we'll get into that a little bit more. We actually moved away from residential. We love those big projects that are challenging, that not just everybody can take on, that we can come in with a creative solution, those types of things, right?
Yep.
So,
well, and truth be told, before you got away from that, Skyline did my mother's roof. She lives in a duplex, and she had to coordinate with her adjoining neighbor and so on and so forth, and they did a fantastic job. But there's a whole lot of companies out there that put shingle roofs on. I can put shingle roofs on. I don't want to, but I can. But the reality is, I see what you do. Like with I want to say it's Asbury United Methodist Church in Harrisonburg. I've watched that. I've been on that roof before when I was still in mechanical contracting, and I was an HR and safety guy. So I know I know exactly. My boots have been on that. My steel-toed boots have been on that roof. I'm watching the detail. I've been on a lot of manufacturing roofs in my career as a safety guy and doing the different stuff. So I'm relating to what I see, and it's a level of value add that you do that is very, very specific. So I really appreciate you sharing that. It's not just, hey, we're slapping roofs on. It's right. A very high level skill set.
Yeah.
Now that leads me to talk to me about either way you described there. Before I do that, I'm going to back up. You said something that you talked with Kevin about, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do that, to make sure you guys were in line and how you share the message that I don't often hear, and I challenge a lot of the business executives we deal with to recognize that with 100 employees, that represents probably 400 to 500 total bodies, belly buttons, if you will, that you guys are responsible for. And that's not something you take lightly personally as the business development guy, because, hey, if you're dropping the ball, I know it's a couple of you in business development, but if you drop the ball, how many of those people go hungry?
All of them.
Right?
Yeah, it's a team effort. It really is. And that goes back to what you were saying earlier. You mentioned, what was it about Skyline? And man, you'd said something earlier I wanted to tie back in, and now I'm forgetting it. But anyways, the value. Oh yeah, when as far as my responsibility in leadership, and I wanted to bring that back up, and that was the the leadership. For me in that leadership role is it's developing those relationships with the clients. It's working within a team to make sure we're getting the job done and getting the proposals out and doing a good creative solution that's providing value to the clients, right? But that's all a team effort, and that's all leading back to our team, our family of that we've created here, that we have to perform as a team. Otherwise, it's going to go badly.
Yeah, absolutely. For the customers, for the clients, and everybody else involved. That's absolutely right. Now, either direction you pick, or even if it's both, talk to me about a recent project that you and the team at Skyline have been involved with, or maybe a campaign that you've kind of led the way, and the impact it's really made on the community that you support, or any sector in the industries that you serve.
Yeah, so probably the funnest project that we recently have completed is the Buc-ee's project. So I'm sure you're aware of it, but there's a Buc-ee's coming to Mount Crawford, and we were very privileged to be involved in that project. It's a big national grocery or convenience store chain, but they try to use local contractors, and we were able to partner with them on that project, and that's been really cool project to be involved in. And the impact obviously is going to be a lot of good paying jobs, as well as a community kind of I don't know how it'll directly impact the community, other than obviously a lot of good business coming through and whatnot. But that one was pretty cool. And then the other one I was actually going to mention was the Asbury United Methodist Church, because that was a cool project we did. I think that was a little longer ago, maybe a year or so ago. We finished up on that one, but that was a really, really cool project that it's kind of an icon in downtown Harrisonburg, and we were honored to be a part of that one as well.
Yeah, it's one of the things I've really enjoyed seeing you do personally, but also as a team, Skyline doing, is having a good social media footprint. Not to say, hey, look at us, and patting yourselves on the back, but to focus on here's the clients, here's the people that we're really serving, and showing visibility for them too. And there's reasons we get along so well, because we have that same heart for how do we serve the people around us.
Yeah.
Very cool. Now, let's dig into Skyline a little bit more. When you were the team, you said, hey, I learned in this other role where I'm doing the in-home and so on and so forth, but it didn't necessarily meet your values. Let's talk specifically about purpose, and how the purpose that Skyline has as an organization really aligned with your own values and your purpose, and why you've been so happy in the time you've been there.
Yeah. So, coming to Skyline, I quickly realized that we had a team that really actually, cared about doing the job right. There's a lot of ways to go about business, and finding a firm or a business or a culture that aligns with your values is sometimes not the easiest. And I feel like I was blessed with the opportunity. I think God really opened that door up for me. And so at Skyline, one of the things we really strive to do is build a brand that is based on relationships. It's based on doing the job right, and it's coming up with creative solutions. If it's a tough job, if it's complicated on, how can we get these folks what they need, whether it's a aesthetic appeal they're going for, or whether they're trying to come up with an economical solution that they don't have to spend a small fortune, because obviously, as everything is getting more expensive, right? So coming up with good creative solutions, and being able to deliver on those then as well, and building that long-term relationship. We're there for the long term. We're not there to just run in, throw a roof on, and walk away. If you have issues, if you have service needs, all those things. So we're really built on building relationships with folks that want that job done right. They want the relationship that they can call Steven up and say, hey, I got an issue. What can you do? Or, they know that when they have us do the project, it's going to be done right. It's not going, they're not going to end up 5 years down the road with a mess that we've seen before. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so that's really what, that mindset of making the end result a priority, making the long-term relationship, doing it right, that really aligns with what I believe. I think doing things right, even if you're not the cheapest roofer in the market or the cheapest whatever in the market, the value far exceeds, right? And so being able to align myself with this company has really been awesome in that sense, because I know, and here's the other thing, construction's messy. Things go wrong. And I've seen our team step up and own, hey, this happened. We're going to make sure you're taken care of, and so it's not just running on to the next project. It's saying, hey, we're here for the long term. We want to treat you right. And hey, we miss doing this thing. We're going to come back and take care of it. Now, obviously, we try to avoid that on the front end, right? But when things happen, that gives me a lot of confidence to be at a company knowing that the leader is going to stand behind. Kevin's going to say, hey, he's going to look at it. He's going to see what the issue was, and he's going to move forwards and say, so, yeah, that really, I think in a nutshell says what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's solid. Steven, the fellow that's coming in, I'm so excited about Mark Cole. He's the CEO of Maxwell Leadership. He's bought all of John Maxwell's companies. He travels the world with John. I've heard Mark say, it's one of the most powerful quotes I've ever heard in my life. I trust people that make mistakes. I don't trust people that make excuses. And in leadership in that space, we're going to make mistakes, but you said it, we're going to own it and we're going to make it right.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. It's not if I'm going to make a mistake, it's when is it and what's the significance and how quick can I fix it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially in contracting, it's not, it's not on the front end. It's not, me giving my sales spiel to whoever. It's, when a client can really trust us is when, we've done a couple projects, something did go wrong and they see how we handled it. It's not always easy to work through because, there's so many factors, but it's, the important thing is that you work through it, that you don't just run away from it. Right. And so that's when you can really know you can trust a contractor or trust the firm or the person you're working with. What's their response when things didn't go well? Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've heard John Maxwell say over the years, I've never seen that person in adversity, so I can't really talk to what level of integrity they have. You only see that integrity in times of adversity. Yeah. And that speaks to it. Now, you also said this, and I'll get to the last question after that. Yeah. You talked about, hey, it's not always about being the cheapest. I've told people that sometimes free or the cheapest is the most expensive option you can pick.
I've seen it. Yeah.
Wowee. Yeah, Cindy and I, maybe a year or so ago, had a potential client reach out and quoted some stuff and so on and so forth. And shaved a lot off because it was a cool relationship potentially, and we liked some of the people in the organization. And they came back and said, yeah, there's so and so out of such and such that can do it for, I think it was like 60%. And I said, well, then they're not good at what they do, because we gave you almost 60% off of what we would usually do. And then they're not putting time into it. They're not good. They've not established value. And we can do business with them, but that's okay. God bless you. Anyway.
No, it is. And that's one of the things that is always a challenge for me, especially breaking into a new area where people don't know the Skyline brand. People don't know what we're about, and they don't have somebody that works over at ABC facility they can call up and say, hey, you've done work with Skyline. Now, obviously we can do that across, we can give them references and whatnot, but that's always a tough challenge to effectively communicate that, especially in building a new relationship that, look, you're going to see the value if you work with us. But getting to the value thing side of, instead of focusing on, well, they're 5% cheaper, they're 10% cheaper. Well, what are what are they not doing, or maybe they're just running on low margin, and then guess what? They're not. Maybe they're. Well, I think maybe I should stop there. But because I don't want, maybe they're just not as focused on the quality, right? Maybe they're just trying to get work and doing what they're doing, and that's okay. But I think if you can learn to focus on that.
Hey, when we started our business, a dear friend of mine today, we were just getting to know one another. His business is probably 300 yards from where you're sitting right now, to the south, between there and the company Skyline's home office. And he says, Wes, if you're not charging me enough, my concern is when I need you later on, you're no longer in business. I need you to make sure you're charging me fairly. Don't pillage me, but charge me fairly, because I need you to be sustainable. And if we're not sustainable, we can't serve people long term. So exactly.
Yeah, that was the point I was trying to make, and I kind of fumbled a little bit there. But if you're not paying your guys good, are they going to be there for you? Are you taking care of your team? All those things, right?
Yep. So absolutely. Now, Stephen, you're not an old guy. You don't have the gray hair I do, but I'm going to ask you this question anyway, because I've watched you work hard and be very, very intentional about how you've done it yourself. What advice would you give somebody that's young, aspiring in their professional journey, regardless of what role they're in today, and they're looking to move up in their career where they hold more leadership responsibility?
Yeah, I'm definitely still, I would say, in that growing phase and learning myself, right? So I'm probably not the most qualified to answer that. At the same time, a couple of things that I've learned, and I think this one I learned from Patrick Bet-David, actually. One of his big things is be patiently aggressive, right? And I've really struggled with that, because I'm just aggressive and not very patient. But you have to put yourself out there. If you don't put yourself out there, in fact, I actually have the quote hanging up on my wall. I'm not going to quote it because it's kind of a long quote, but Teddy Roosevelt, the quote, "The man in the arena." I don't know if you're familiar with that. That really, I don't know, that, for those of you listening, go look it up, read it. It's yeah, it's a good quote. If you're not in it, you're not going to get anywhere, right? And so the other thing, and I'm still learning this, but it takes time. It takes way more time than you think it's going to take. Persistence. Getting this role here, I actually I had to follow up a couple of times to land the role that I'm in at now, and I put myself out there. And then I stayed in touch, and I ended up, getting where I'm at because of that. Another thing that I really, and this kind of goes back to what I said earlier, sales, even if it's not something you want to do long term, sales is a great opportunity to learn how to communicate with people, to problem solve, to build relationships, to network. Doing a sales role for a couple of years, I believe, is a really great way to, grow yourself personally, to get out there, to get in front of people, to interact with different folks. Networking is important as well. I met you through networking, right? I think your relationships is what gets you a long way in life. And so taking that time to really, lean in and learn communication skills, learn how to talk with people, learn how to problem solve. And here's another one. I was looking at my notes here to make sure I didn't forget anything, because I jotted a couple of things down. One that Patrick Bet-David has said, and this one I'm still working on, but it's learn to solve for X, right? So the idea behind that is not everybody wants to be the guy in a company, right? Obviously, there's some opportunity with leadership, with responsibility comes rewards, right? But also the risks. And maybe you don't want to work 60, 70 hours a week and have 100 people relying on you and, have that stress and have people calling you all hours of the day, right? So sitting down and saying, okay, I want to be able to impact the community. I want to lead better. But what does that look like for me? Do I want freedom? Do I want to grow a company to, whatever the size you want to grow to? But what's that end result? Because for me, when earlier in my life, like I said, this is still evolving, but earlier in my life, all I could see was dollar signs and making more money and growing. But then I started realizing, okay, you have to make certain sacrifices, right? And what are those sacrifices you're willing to make? And what do you actually want at the end of the day, right? Is it some mystical number, be it, whatever the number is, or the status or the job title or whatever, but what does that actually mean at the end of the day when you get there? And what you don't want to do is spend 30 years chasing something and end up there and you finally got there and you're like, well, this is not what I wanted. Why am I even here? So solving for X, I would say that is something that this is talking to me as well, right? But setting down and looking, okay, where do I want to be at 40 years old? Where do I want to be at 50 years old? What do I want my life to look like in the meantime? And then figuring out, okay, how do I get there, right? So
that was a whole lot of wisdom from a guy that's, I'm going to say 30-ish. So
27. I'm okay with age.
Yeah, but the reality, that was powerful. And thank you for sharing it. And the part, so quick commercial with the event, it's really themed, the event, the Leadership Legacy event is themed this year around my newest book, Leading with Clear Purpose. And that book started in December of 2023. The idea behind it, when I had a phone call with one of my lifelong best friends, and he's been a hero to me, quite frankly, Stephen, because I've always watched him be just one of the hardest working, best character people that I've ever known in my life. And I heard him sound empty. And Stephen, in my life, I've not seen people burn out because they've worked too hard. I've seen people burn out because they don't have a purpose driving them. And what you just said is, what's the reason I'm doing all this? Without that strong purpose, I'm not working 60 hours a week. Shit, I don't want to work 30 hours a week if I don't have a strong purpose for it. But if it matters and it's something that means something to me, 100 hours might not be enough. It's how much can I do to achieve the things that are important? And everybody's got to find their own. And that's the whole reason I wrote the book. That's the whole reason we're building this event. And it's themed around in different segments, different panels. And that's why we're doing these conversations, because each partner has a strong purpose for them, or they're not going to be a partner with it. That's just how we work, right? And that's, gosh, this was cool. Is there anything else you'd like to throw in before we wind it down?
I mean, I would just say again, thanks for inviting us on. Appreciate the partnership. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all I've got.
Cool. We love the values and the purpose that you and the whole team at Skyline provide. We appreciate the relationship and the partnership. As a quick close to this, I'll say that as we always do with our Leading at the Next Level podcast, we say, hey, if you need continuing education credit or anything here's really struck a nerve, we've got a course called Leading at the Next Level, like the podcast, but it's an entire digital and live program that we started in 2018. It's now over 150 hours worth of content in it. If you'd like to kick the tires, send us an email at admin@dove-development.net, and we'll give you a 45-day access just to check it out, see what it's worth. We do some live stuff. We do a lot of digital, and there's a whole lot of continuing education credit built into it. So with that said, we'll wind it down. Stephen, thanks for this. We look forward to seeing you very soon. Hang tight as I end it, and we'll catch up soon. God bless everybody.